Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Collider Interview YouTube channel for yet another Cobra Kai Season 6 Part 1 interview. Jon Hurwitz, Hayden Schlossberg, and Josh Heald. Before I send everybody away who hasn't watched the new episodes, I will just say yet again, congratulations on Part 1.
Oh, thank you so much.
Love.
With that being said, clearly this is a full-blown spoiler interview right now. So if you have not watched the first 5 episodes of Season 6, this is where we already say goodbye and tell you to go watch them and then come right back to this video after. We're just going for it. I started with like a little bit of a lighter softball question this time around, and it's a question that I have a feeling I've asked you all throughout the show's run. But can you tell me how you landed on that particular hawk style for Eli this season? Was there any trial and error, or did you always know what you wanted him to look like?
With the American flag mohawk? You know what? We're at the Sekai Taikai. Our team is like the sole American team, and we wanted them to kind of enter a little bit as the ugly Americans in a certain way, you know, flaunting it out there, you know, Johnny behaving kind of the way he does. And, you know, so I think that, you know, when it was also just to make it where it was seemingly a foregone conclusion that Hawk's going to be, you know, along for the ride, so that, you know, in episode 4, when he gets knocked out, you know, he had the mohawk for nothing, at least seemingly.
That thought actually broke my heart when that happened. Let's go to Daniel and Mr. Miyagi next. First, how did you come to the conclusion that in order to forward Daniel's story, and I guess also the show in general, you had to unearth new information about Mr. Miyagi?
I mean, for years, we've been obsessed with Mr. Miyagi, obviously. We've always utilized his character and his legacy and his memory to drive Daniel's story farther. And it's always been positive. It's always been Daniel backslides a little bit. Daniel remembers a lesson and then remembers, oh, I have this tool in my toolbox. I have all the answers. I just need to remember them. This was kind of exploring the nightmarish version, the opposite. He doesn't have a problem and then discovers a new toolbox. And inside that toolbox are things that are scary. And, you know, we've been talking with Robert Mark Kamen for years, who wrote the original franchise, created, the character of Mr. Miyagi, and, shares our enthusiasm and obsession with that character. And it became something that we wanted to begin to peel back the layers of Mr. Miyagi and start to look at him as not just a deified figure, but a man with a past, with a long and storied, life, not all of which he shared with Daniel. And what if Daniel were to come upon something or multiple things that might challenge his opinion of that man?
I said this to Ralph at the junket. What a smart and I guess unexpected way to crack open the character of Daniel LaRusso. I kind of always just assumed that foundation for him was solid and unwavering, but opening that chest and revealing new information about, you know, the person who's essentially been the pillar of his life since the beginning of the franchise is a very, very curious thing to rock. I like it quite a bit thus far. I see great potential in it going forward into the next 2 parts. I have seen some chatter out there. Oh no, they're going to unearth new information about Mr. Miyagi, and it's going to heavily impact how I feel when I go back and watch the original films. What would you tell someone out there who is concerned about how this new information is going to affect their repeat viewings of the movies?
I think it will affect their repeat viewings, but hopefully in a way that they like when it's all said and done. You know, I think, you know, when you look at the original movie after seeing Cobra Kai, there's a different way you're looking at Johnny Lawrence. And I feel like it's, you know, our goal is only to explore the universe even more. And, you know, for us, the storyline is, you know, really meant for an audience of, you know, people who get older and look at their mentors and parents and learn more about them and understand them in a deeper way. It doesn't necessarily mean everything that happened beforehand is tarnished. It's you just understand the person better. And I think that's our goal ultimately at the end.
Okay, I like the sound of that. I saved my Mr. Miyagi question that you might not be able to answer for me for last in this particular section. Can you tease anything about what it might mean that Mr. Miyagi has fought in the Sekai Taikai?
I mean, it means that, his relationship to tournaments is maybe a little bit different than what Daniel thought it was and what we were led to believe in the past. We don't know. First of all, we don't know if he fought in the Sekai Taikai. We just know that he has a headband from the Sekai Taikai. So, we don't know what exactly happened there to this point. And you'll have to watch further to find out more about that. But, it's, I think there's a lot of intrigue as Daniel enters the middle 5 episodes and he's at the Sekai Taikai. He certainly wants to know more about what went on there, and if anyone maybe knows anything about the history.
If you look at the original movie, Mr. Miyagi makes it pretty clear that he hasn't been in tournaments before to Daniel, so you can interpret that as a conflict that Daniel's going to have to deal with. Why would he not say anything about this and act as if that's not a part of his past? If it is, again, like John said, it's a headband that could be anybody's. Daniel assumes it's he fought in the Sekai Taikai.
Interesting things to consider. I feel like I'm going to obliterate the value of our part 2 interview during this conversation, but I feel like a lot of people are going to want to know the answer to this now. What can you tell us about the show's structure going forward? Is the Sekai Taikai tournament going to be confined to part 2, or is it going to bleed into part 3 as well?
The Sekai Taikai has begun at the end of part 1 and will continue into part 2, is what I can tell you. And I can say it's a tournament like you've never seen before. Any idea of what you think a tournament is in the universe of the Karate Kid or Cobra Kai will be completely upended. It will be absolutely nothing like an All Valley, and buckle your seatbelts.
I'll take that. All right, I want to move to Kwon for a minute. Can you guys walk us through the creation of that particular character, and I guess kind of figuring out what qualities you wanted him to have that you thought would pair well with where you wanted to take the Miyagi-Do characters going forward?
Well, we knew that we wanted to see Sensei Kim Da-eun's dojo and her students who've been training even longer than our students and create this threat. And when we thought about the personalities and the new characters that we wanted to bring into the story, I think we wanted to create somebody that was the ultimate, next level. This is season 6 of Cobra Kai, the highest level bully slash martial artist expert. And Brandon Lee is just an amazing martial artist in real life. And we had him audition and he did such a great job. We purposely made it where he was the bad kid in that class. So it's when you're going into Sensei Kim's class, he's the one who's the bully of all those kids. But because of that, he's not the one who's falling in line. And we like the idea of okay, well, Kreese has something to teach him. He gives him direction, and he takes this kid who's the baddest, meanest kid that we've seen yet in this universe and tweaks him and gets him ready to take on our kids. So we wanted it to feel like we had this White Walker army happening in South Korea, and Kreese is just taking this kid and weaponizing him.
Solid comp right there. Given how you just described him, does Kwon have any limits? Is there any particular line he won't cross?
We're gonna have to find that out. I mean, I don't know what you want me to say right now. There's more of Kwon to be seen. All I could say is that we love Kwon as a character. Brandon H. Lee's performance was phenomenal. One fun thing that I'll just add is when we first saw his audition, he had his slate first where he introduces himself and all that. And we saw the sweetest kid in the world talking about how he's a huge fan of Cobra Kai. And it was just like this most adorable kind of thing. And then he does his audition, and he was like kind of a badass, but we had just seen him be like so nice that when we called him back in, we just said to him like, okay, like we gave him full direction, and we just said like, you're the baddest guy on the show in a sense. You're the toughest guy. You're like, you got to be scary to our kids, and you got to be like disrespectful, and you don't give a shit about anything. And his audition immediately after that was just like a whole new level. And it's really great when, on our show, we have this history of characters that are, the bad guy, and all of the actors who play them are just like the nicest people in the world. And he's no different.
I could see that. That's always what I say about horror movies too. I find that like the nicest, warmest people in this business make the sickest and twisted movies, and there's something right about it. Brandon's also exceptional in that role. It's like the perfect definition of someone who is like too good at playing bad, where you can't take your eyes off of him in the best possible way.
100%.
All right, let's lean into Kreese. I'm going to repeat a question I've asked you all since the very beginning. At this point in the story, do you think Kreese is redeemable?
I think there was a moment where Kreese was redeemable, but it was taken from him. I think Kreese started to show the cracks and the vulnerabilities and the warmth that, was going to kind of like take that, volcanic shell that's on him, full of, hate and vitriol, and it was going to cut through. He showed it, and it was interpreted as weakness by Silver, and Silver struck hard, and yet there was still a yearning within Kreese to find a way back. When Johnny and Daniel visited him in prison, and even when Tory was there and he had warmth for her, there was still this hope that there could be a reconciliation. But when Johnny and Daniel turned their back on him so coldly, and when Kreese was put into a corner that he had to kind of chew his way out of, I think that was the point of no return for John Kreese. And, he's coming into the world, and hell's coming with him, and we'll see what is wrought.
If I asked Marty that same question, would he have the same answer?
He'd use more Western analogies,
okay.
but the same answer, yes.
All right, I'll take that. I'm going to lean pretty heavy into episode 5 now, because I think it's pretty exceptional for a number of reasons. But there's one particular storyline and performance in it that truly blows my mind. It's obviously the Tory storyline and Peyton List's work in that particular part of the show. At what point in the writing process did you all decide that the passing of Tory's mother was necessary at this point in the story, and figuring out how that would impact her?
Well, we always knew that we were going to, pay off the sick mother story and backstory that was going on in her life. We didn't want to leave that unresolved. Either she was going to get better or she was going to die. And, for us, we're always trying to put our characters through, as much conflict as possible to make it where they're as strong as possible, at the end. And, for her, she has a lot of ground to cover from the first 2 seasons on the show, where she was breaking into, houses and beating the shit out of people. For us, we were like, how do you understand that character? Why would a character do that? It's because she has, some mental issues, stemming from like having so much on her plate. And, just as, things are starting to come together for her, to have the rug get pulled out from underneath her, just puts her in the, the most difficult place. And, that's, for us, we're always trying to find, conflict for our characters on the show. And with these first 5 episodes, the challenge is there is no conflict for the characters for the first time externally. Their rivalries are over. They're friends now. Cobra Kai is gone, at least in the Valley. And yet it's everything that's internal, from what's going on in their lives to, the competition that's between them, that like drives the conflict in these first 5 episodes. So, and she's the one who has to deal with it the most. And Peyton is just amazing. Everything that we threw at her, she knocked out of the park.
It is. I've said this multiple times. That's an exceptional performance beat that I hope is honored as such as we make our way through the season and other elements of the process of releasing a TV show. Obviously, Peyton is a professional and she knows what she's doing. But for the three of you, what are some particular things that you aim to do for her in order to support her and set her up for this much success handling such an emotional part of her story?
I mean, she's been phenomenal from the beginning on our show. I mean, I remember seeing her audition tape and we were just like, that's Tory. And then just working with her, we've seen that any challenge that we've given her, she's risen to the occasion. And she's really directable, and there's such soulfulness in her performance, and she's funny, and she's, she's learned martial arts. I mean, at the beginning, she entered the show like knowing nothing, and she had no time to train way back when. And now she's, her martial arts is at a whole new level. I mean, she puts in the work, she cares, she's, she lives as the character as you need to. And, for this was a thing that we knew that at the end of this episode, we wanted Tory to rejoin Cobra Kai. And we needed the way to get her there. And this was the way that was going to get her to do this, put her in a place where she's, feeling good finally after all this time. And then take it away from her with a little whisper in the ear from Sensei Kreese. And she felt like this was her only option. And just, in terms of Peyton, it's, she gets the scripts and she's never, it's so funny. Like, she's not somebody who ever reaches out with any questions. She's never anybody who she just gets it on the page. Like, she gets it. She shows up, she delivers. If there's any adjustment that needs to be made, you direct her, and the next take it's there. I mean, she's been doing this forever in her life, but to play a character like this, it's so different than anything she's ever done. And she's got every tool in the toolbox.
Not that I didn't think she was already this good, but right after binging part 1 of season 6, I went and I watched School of Spirits because I gotta, prepare to maybe cover that the second time around. Like, I don't think she gets enough credit for how talented she is. She's really something else. I want to kind of narrow down the focus to writing a particular scene in this episode. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael Jonathan Smith is credited as the writer on episode 5. So maybe talk a little bit about working with him on this. But can you tell me about, I guess, crafting the conversation that happens after the fight between Sam and Tory is stopped? Because I think it's a really beautifully written and structured piece that obviously serves Tory quite well, but by cutting to certain people at just the right moments, it also kind of re-highlights the dynamics that we've been exploring in terms of family members and friends, and also what it means to be a sensei all throughout the show.
It was a heavy, moment to do that to a character, when, not that we have any particular affinity for Tory's mom as a, living, breathing character. We've never seen her face until, this episode for the first time. But as a stand-in for somebody that Tory cares about and as a storyline, it's been tremendously important. It's been the main thing kind of looming over Tory's life, the whole time that we've known Tory and that we had any knowledge of what's happening behind the scenes. So the idea that, this would happen right at the moment of everything kind of seemingly coming together for her was meant to be devastating. And not only is it devastating for her, but you see it on Amanda's face. Like the moment that, Amanda comes over and, tells Daniel we have to stop the fight. Like, I get goosebumps in that moment because, and we we were there at the story construction of this, but it's a magic trick that works on, us every time. The moment Peyton screams out, because my mother died, and it just, echoes out into the yard. The empathy on Johnny's face, on Daniel's face, the trauma for Sam realizing that, this former rival that's now, a friend is just, it's all just soul crushing. And then you just see the dominoes start to fall. You see why Johnny feels differently than Daniel, that he's not just using that moment to say, I disagree with you. We pop inside and we see that he's, relating that to the moment that his mother passed and how he felt then, and that Daniel wouldn't have that muscle memory. And this, of course, just brings up, just everyone gets their hackles up. People say things that are inappropriate and that are, in the face, flying in the face of reason. And you can see how like something good can just all fall apart in a moment. And it was everyone just brought their A game with it. Michael did a tremendous job as always with the script. I mean, the writer's room, really, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves for those mid-season finales, as we call them, the episodes 5s, and in this case, the episode 10s as well. But they have to be worthy of a break, and it was firing on all cylinders.
I was just going to say that, like, in the writer's room with that kind of thing, you're literally, we discuss in detail what each person there is thinking. And that's, we do that throughout every moment that characters are on screen. But like a moment like that in particular, where you're like nearing the end of an episode, but something so major happened, it's like, okay, how does Sam feel? How does Robbie feel? How does Daniel feel? How does each person feel? And you're just going down the list and you construct that all together. And Michael did a great job putting it all together.
Just because you brought that up, I'll follow up. Is there any particular character who perhaps is like more in the background of that moment, but you all actually figured out what this individual was thinking and people should kind of keep an eye out for their reaction in this moment?
I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily anyone more than anybody else, because you're going to pay attention to everybody. But like even Devin, for example, somebody who has gone through, a mother passing in her own life. Every single character we're thinking about there, even if you're not super focused on them in the moment, like, each actor knows what they're supposed to do and the camera's capturing them.
It's so true. It's why her asking her if she's okay, what's wrong, has like such weight and depth to it. I will briefly jump to Robbie and Miguel. For the fight between the two of them, I'm not sure if you think about it this specifically. It might be me overthinking it, but when crafting a fight like that, what is it like figuring out who needs to win a point and when?
It's so interesting because, we've done a lot of 3-point matches in honor of the tournament. So there's like only a certain number of, permutations of how a fight like that could go. Is it like, is it back and forth and back and forth? Is it one person dominating and then one person coming back? And I think, it's all a question of the story that you want to tell. And I think we built things up with the two of those characters where you're on both of their sides and they both have something to fight for. And they're both a little bit on edge and off tilt going into that fight because they're maybe putting a little bit too much pressure on themselves. And so I think we wanted it where, okay, like, they're both in a bad place, but at least Miguel has Sam there and has all the support and Robbie doesn't have Tory. So that's like why things start out the way they do. And then Tory comes in and he gets his mojo back and his motivation and comes back, which puts Miguel more kind of off balance and ultimately is why he lost. So it's like you think about it in those terms, but it's all about what you want with the characters. And I think also there, because Robbie's come in second place a bunch of times, it's an opportunity here for him to have this win, which usually the past times that we've seen in these big fights, he either loses or like kicks Miguel off a balcony. So like finally something good happens at the fight with Robbie, and we like that.
Oh, I feel like you just perfectly described the beauty of these first 5 episodes is that like you care about everyone and you're rooting for everyone. So it makes, I don't know, like it makes that kind of like internal battle for the viewer even more complex when you're watching these scenes and you want everybody to win, but everybody can't win.
Right.
Stressful. All right. I'll ask you one question and I want all 3 of you to answer to tease the remaining episodes of season 6. If you had to pick a single favorite episode, what would it be and why?
I mean, I'm going to, first of all, I want to say that I love the rest, all 10 are great. But I'm going to say without question for me, it's the finale, because that's the culmination of stuff that we've been building towards since day one. I mean, there are scenes in that episode that we've been talking about when it was just the 3 of us before we pitched the show to Ralph and Billy, even. Things that we've been like hoping to do for all these years. So there's elements of that. The performances from the actors are wonderful. I don't want to spoil anything about it by saying too much, but I will just say that we feel confident that it's going to be a finale that people are going to like, instead of being like angry and feeling like we screwed it up and dropped the ball at the last second. I think people are going to be fulfilled and very pleased.
I trust you guys.
I'm gonna. I mean, it's hard not to say the finale. I think it's so special to be able to reach that point and write with intent to get to that point of typing the end. That episode aside, episode 10 is is one that will be talked about for a long time. Not just because there's going to be a break between episode 10 and and ultimately the third part, but it is something. I don't even know what I could say about it that wouldn't be a spoiler. I don't know what verbiage I could use, but it is something. And there's a couple of episodes this season where I can't believe we did something that we set out to do, and that episode and episode 14 each have something in them that it takes the show to a bigger place.
Are you seeing me hating myself for asking this question?
I'm just going to say episode 613, the 13th episode. And honestly, it's like the last 3 episodes, are, it's taught that have amazing moments. The others are horrible. No. No, it's just like I think it's just like you feel us ramping towards the end, but I'll just say like you really start to feel it in 613, and so it's like I think those last 3 episodes have these like these big payoffs, and we obviously saved a lot of big things for the end, and so you start to see it not just in the last episode but in the episodes prior.
I lie. I'm squeezing in one more question. We have a date for part 2. Do you know when we'll find out when part 3 is coming out?
I'm not sure. They haven't told us the plan yet as to when that'll be announced. I know it's next year, but they have not told us when the specific date will go out there.
All right.
We do have an idea of when it is. Sometimes we don't know.
Okay. I feel
sometimes
like
they change it around and want to have a little flexibility also. So the date that we have in our brains right now might not even be the date that ultimately gets announced. We'll have to wait and see.
You just opened the door for me to ask you that question every time we talk until it's announced. I am going to say thank you for your time. Thank you for indulging me with my specific spoiler questions that I was just itching to ask the other week. Huge congratulations on these first 5 episodes. I cannot wait for more.
Awesome.
Thank you, Barry.
Always fun to talk.